Hello, free people of Earth, and welcome to This Week in Tyranny, the most hardcore news show on Earth. A weekly program about authoritarianism, government overreach, and global injustice. Live from Chicago, Illinois. If tyranny is not at your doorstep, that's because there is someone in the street keeping it at bay.
We murdered my man like it was okay. For the life he ended, he got suspended with no pay. But if a man would've took the cop life, he would've got life and never again see the street lights.
Hello everyone, and welcome to This Week in Tyranny. I am your host, Conrad Rogas. Today is Friday, July 28th, and this is episode 34 of This Week in Tyranny. And the subject of this week's episode will be about Vinny Eastwood, a follow-up episode about Vinny Eastwood, and specifically his appeal coming up. Vinny will be appealing his conviction that I discussed previously on This Week in Tyranny a few weeks back. He will be appealing his conviction on the 31st of July, so that's Monday. That will probably be a day after this episode comes out. So the reason this episode is made is, of course, because this is a clear example of political persecution, of silencing of free speech. This is an example of the broadening of the reach of the totalitarian regime of New Zealand, and it is also a foreshadowing, a look ahead of the tyranny that is coming to you in whatever country, whatever city, place you are watching this from. So I have a journalistic responsibility as a member of the alternative media to discuss this because not many are discussing it. And this is not only because I consider Vinny a mentor and a friend, it's also because he simply is a veteran. He is a person who has put in 15 plus years in this truth-telling movement, in the movement of people who are using their voice and giving activists a platform. Somebody who has been fighting against violence and against totalitarian regimes, against basically the advance of our enslavement. Okay, he has been doing this for years and years, going on 2 decades. So what's going to happen now, I discussed previously in the episode I did. I'll go over it briefly, why he was arrested in the first place. When New Zealand had another lockdown months after the pandemic, when in the United States the pandemic was considered over, they had a lockdown because of one positive case. The country went into lockdown with rapidly. It was announced that it will be beginning soon. So of course Vinny and Billy Tekahika, I will link him, his website, his channel as well, because I've been discussing Vinny because Vinny is the one that basically I know that is a member of the alternative media as well, but also Billy TK is, he is a part of this story too. His sentence was actually 4 months. He is facing bigger consequences, and he actually had to pay even bigger fines. So I just wanted to mention that in all fairness, Billy TK he has had this injustice done to him specifically. Just as it has been done to Vinny. So that's what happened. They got arrested for this protest. Now this wasn't the type of protest that we get here in America where people are throwing up rocks through windows, setting stuff on fire. This is your classical free speech, peaceful protest, just with a microphone, with a megaphone, just telling whoever may be in the street, recording it, that hey, these lockdowns are unjust, that the people have dignity, that the people do not agree with this lockdown because there was no really basis for it at all under natural rights. So that's a quick synopsis of what happened. He was arrested, he was convicted, he was deprived of his freedom, and that's why I'm making such a big deal about this and featuring it once again on This Week in Tyranny, because Vinny is about to walk into that court again to appeal his conviction, and if his appeal is not successful, then he may not come out of that courtroom. And the point here is, whenever you're deprived of your freedom, you are not guaranteed to get it back. So I know people say, oh, this isn't a big deal, 3 months, okay, this happens all the time. Why are you making such a big deal about this? But the reason I'm making a big deal about this is because when you are deprived of your freedom, you are never guaranteed to get it back. You don't know if you're going to walk free again. You don't know if that will be the last time that you are taking a free breath, a breath in a state of freedom. Okay, you are never guaranteed to get it back, especially when you are speaking the truth and you are speaking the message of freedom under a totalitarian regime. Okay, the people in my nation, Poland, who were doing the same, who are getting arrested, and it was supposed to be just, a small arrest, insignificant. They were sent off to Siberia, they were sent off to the gulags, they never got released from those prisons many times, okay? They were never set free again. Now people think that that's not the situation that we're in now, but look at the regime, look at their actions. By their fruits you shall know them. So what is the it might as well be, the New Zealand regime, what have they done? They arrested somebody for peacefully protesting, okay, something completely non-violent, and was not inciting the people to rebellion or anything like that. This is just a peaceful protest that at most what this should get is basically they should get a request to disperse from state agents, right? They could call in the police and they could say, okay, please don't stand in front of here, don't do this. They deprived this man of his freedom. They imposed intense economic pressure on him because the bail conditions he received were inhumane. They were essentially solitary confinement, not having access to his phone. Vinny Eastwood couldn't contact Billy TK. He couldn't leave his house at all, right? So nobody comes to see him. This is essentially solitary confinement. By the way, he was in solitary confinement because he was detained for 28 hours. Now, people who have never been deprived of their freedom, who've never been arrested, don't know what that's like. It was supposed to be like 3 hours to process you, to arrest you and let you go. Try it. Lock yourself up for 28 hours. Well, you actually can't do this. You can't recreate it because when it's forcibly done to you, it's different. This isn't like going in a dark, quiet closet for that long. And even that is quite a feat for those who haven't attempted this. But if you've been deprived of your freedom and you're locked up for 28 hours in a small holding cell, that can cause irreversible damage to your psyche. That's scientific fact right there. A quick interruption in this episode, just a brief aside. I will make a point in this episode to display the emotion of anger, to display some righteous indignation, because I think that's been completely missing from the coverage of Vinny's story. I've been keeping an eye on, I've been closely tracking and following Vinny's tour of different radio shows, different people he's been talking to get this story out there. And I think this kind of voice of being fed up, like my outro song says, I'm fed up with that bullshit. I think that voice of anger is sorely missing. And nothing against the people he's been talking to. They've done a great job. I hear a lot of trying to cheer him up. Okay, you can use this as something to build from. Even if you go to jail for 3 months, after you do your 3 months, you can come back stronger. You can use this as kind of a springboard to bounce off of and do bigger and better things. I don't think we should approach it from that perspective. I don't think we should be doing that. I think we should be saying, no, this is unacceptable. We are fed up with this. And if his appeal is not successful, and if this tyrannical regime and their judge decides to lock this man up when he should no way be spending a day, he should not be spending a second, because he did not do anything wrong at all. He did not violate any law. He violated codes and dictates which are not lawful, and time will tell that. Okay, time will show that. But if they decide to controvert that, and this tyrannical regime, as all tyrannical regimes, decides to lock this man up for speaking freely, we need to make a whole big fucking ruckus about it. And that's why I'm making a point to display this emotion. In this episode, I usually talk about the news in a very toned down manner, okay? In a very chilled out way, a very scholarly, okay, news reporter type of way, because I want to talk about these stories. I want to give them that respect to talk about them analytically and objectively, even though I interject my own analysis a lot. But I won't do this here because this story, as we approach his date of the appeal, I wanted to make sure that that sense of urgency gets passed down to the viewing and listening audience, and I will post Vinny's information of how you can donate to him, because I know money's tight for everyone. I know money's tight for me. I won't go into personal details, but okay, we're having a rough time. But keep in mind, this is a person who's been trying to help us, who's been helping New Zealanders to put the voices of activists out there, not just in New Zealand, but here in the United States. He is one of these people that I always say in my intro. The catchphrase of this show is, if tyranny is not at your doorstep, that's only because there's someone out there in the street keeping the tyranny at bay. That's Vinny. That's who's doing that. Now this person is about to be deprived of their freedom potentially, and I wanted to make sure to pass on the sense of urgency. This is not time to be chill and just take the information in and say, wow, yeah, that's terrible what they're doing. No, this is time to raise our voice. It's time to start calling people, to start calling these, even, this is something I usually don't even support doing this, but if you are the type to call somebody, to petition them to do stuff like that, this is the time to petition. This is the time to call people. This is the time, and I do support doing this, to make life difficult for those government officials and those judges and those people who would be violating this person's individual rights. Now, if that happens, they should face the consequences for it. That doesn't mean I'm saying to do any kind of violence to them, but I am saying that is the time, if they're doing violence to Vinny, that is the time to forcefully stand up to them in an act of self-defense and make sure that they experience the consequences of their wrongful actions. Okay? I'm choosing my words very carefully when I say that. I think I did it well right there, you know. This is an unscripted, unprompted episode. I made a point not to have any sort of notes or anything like that. This is off the cuff because I know this story and I wanted to speak from the mind, but from the heart as well, to really convey how harsh and blatant of an injustice this is. Okay? Today it's Vinny. Tomorrow it'll be me. It'll be somebody else. So this is about not ignoring the story, stressing the story, because it's time to draw a line in the sand. Okay, this is a complete injustice that is happening. Now, let me take a step back. But let me expound on the idea that I brought up about, you know, how it goes in totalitarian regimes. I brought up the idea that, okay, under Stalin, yeah, there was just normal arrests, but those people never saw the light of day again. Their families didn't even know what happened to them. They just died in custody. Now, maybe that we're used to that being such a distant historical thing that doesn't happen in Western societies. Well, in Western societies, they don't arrest people for violating, they don't arrest people for peaceful protests. So when you're seeing that, when that happens, that is the New Zealand regime, the New Zealand so-called government, letting you know that they are no longer behaving like a modern, westernized republic or democracy. They are behaving like a classic, socialist, communist, totalitarian regime, in which if you protest, you will be silenced. Okay? So they are indicating to you who they are. They are exposing to you what a tyrant they are through their actions. Right? So Vinny, he's been deplatformed, he's been shadow banned, he continues to be shadow banned, and then the view numbers show that. This is a person who had thousands and thousands of subscribers, thousands and thousands of views, and as I say again and again, the new censorship is covert. So you could still find Vinny stuff if you look him up. I'll post a link and you can listen to him, and you know, any kind of government can hold their hands up and say, hey, we're not persecuting him. He has a voice, he can speak to you. He live streams every week, every few days. So how can we be censoring him? Well, they are, because the censorship is advanced, it is electronic, it is a conglomeration of censors. It is not just a top-down, specific group of censors, okay, as it used to be. It is not the same government agency of the past. It is not the Stasi or the NKVD or the KGB. It is not any of these government agencies or organizations that are going through the letters and censoring the stuff that they find objectionable. No, it is no longer that. It is a mix of tech companies, of advisory groups, of non-government organizations, of civil liberties organizations, okay, that claim to be for civil liberties. They actually claim to be for that. What they're actually for is the censorship, okay, and marginalization of people, of groups. Ironically, the exact thing that they claim to stand against, that is who they're for, therefore merging with government to place themselves into a power where they are the arbitrators of what is free speech, of what civil liberty type speech is. It is clearly not that. It is actually the exploitation and manipulation of groups like, say, Jewish people or black people to claim to be for their liberties, okay? And that actually marginalizes other groups, that actually destroys their free speech, of course, as part of the Hegelian dialectic. Now, many people, you know what I'm talking about here. You watch this show. I'm not getting any fresh viewers, really. So it would be a waste of time for me to go over stuff that I've already talked about in previous episodes. Most people who will see this, they're familiar with Vinny's story, or they're familiar with me. They're familiar with what's going on in the world. Now here's the problem. There's a whole lot of people out here who are not familiar, and they will never see a video like this. And even if they see a video like this or hear about Vinny's story, they will say something like, well, why was he protesting? Oh, is he an anti-vaxxer? Well, maybe that serves him right, for doing all of that, right? So we get no sort of compassion from these groups. Their ears are never open because the media will paint this person as someone who is associated with insert right-winger here. So their hearts are never open, their ears are never open to listen to what this person's all about. Now, we need to also be open, our hearts need to be open to some of these people that are inflicting this violence, they're infiltrating Vinny's rights. I'm talking about the police, I'm talking about the judge, I'm talking about the people working for organizations like YouTube to shadow ban him and different types of companies that are censoring him. All of these people that have a hand in doing this violence to Vinny, to silencing him, to silencing people like him, to locking up Billy TK, to basically defaming his name and publicly demonizing him. Every human being that's involved in this, they are also a human being, and we need to remember that. We need to remember that these people who usually come from homes where they had parental abandonment issues. They come from homes when they were beat by their parents, and that is what turned them into people that are going to put on the yellow vests and are going to put on the mask and then drag this guy and throw him in a van for peacefully protesting. Every single one of those people is a human being. We have to remember that. He may be technologically censored, he may be technologically shadow banned, but it is not technology that is enslaving us. These are human beings that are doing this, so we must remember, we have to keep our hearts open. Their hearts are close to us. Our hearts need to be open. We need to know the person behind the mask that is putting the handcuffs on, the people who are guarding the jail cells, the people that are guarding the judge in the court system, the judge that judge on some level thinks that they are doing something good, that they are enforcing some sort of justice. We need to remember that these are human beings, and because they are human beings, we can get through to them. But the only way we can get through to them is if we speak, and we need to speak calmly, calmly, objectively, non-combatively, but also sometimes when that doesn't work, the only way you get through to a human being that's hardened like that, you need to speak forcefully. That is what we need to do. We need to speak like this. We need to make sure that they feel it. We need to make sure that they hear it when they go home from their job and they sit down at the table with their family, we need to make sure to tell them, you don't love your family. If you are helping to enslave somebody, to lock them up, and they committed no wrongdoing, they never hurt anybody, they never stole anything. If you're helping to silence and lock people up like that, you are really hurting your children in the long run. You are building the slavery system. You are building the system that in the future is going to hand them over to abusers and pedophiles. You are building the cell for them. Today it's Vinny in the cell, tomorrow it'll be your children. We need to remember to tell these people that, and we do not let them off easily. And you know what? When it does come to force, we need to be ready to back that up with force and be willing to die for it. Because this is a matter of life and death, as I said earlier in this episode. When you get locked up and they deprive you of your freedom, you do not know if you're getting out. So that is no longer civil life. That's no longer your life with your job and your family and your girlfriend. That's over. This is now war. If you lock somebody up in a cage, that is an act of war. Now, I'm not saying respond in military action yet. I'm saying consider that. I'm saying it is still time to break through and try to crack the ice that is covering their hearts. Okay? Their hearts may not be all black and irreversibly yet. But while there is time, we need to start speaking to these people. We need to start speaking up. We need to start talking about this story. We need to start speaking up whenever you see any kind of censorship like was done to Vinny. We need to speak up for people like Vinny Eastwood. We need to support them, because if not, then that ice is going around our hearts as well. And time will tell if we do not speak up, and history will see. These people did nothing. Yes, the wrongdoing was done from the other side, but they did nothing. They did not fight hard enough. History will see that. Our children will see that. And ultimately, we will be no different than those people that are inflicting the violence. That was episode 34. I look forward to next week's episode, hopefully with good news that an injustice was not done over in New Zealand, but we need to be ready for all eventualities. It's coming from a place of love. What I do is coming from a place of love. It's manifesting as tough love, because tough love is necessary when somebody has crossed the line and they're hurting themselves and they're hurting others. The love becomes tough love now. It's coming from a place of love and not war. But make no mistake, if actions of war are done to me and my friends and my family, like Vinny Eastwood, I will respond with actions of war. That's This Week in Tyranny. Thank you for checking it out.